Akufo-Addo, resign now. Resign now, because you
Some protesters seated in the middle of the Professor Evans Atamils High Street chanting, "Nana must go." At another location, they dance to a song titled Sikam Pedede, loosely translated as "Money does not like noise." Around the ministry's enclave, I've met a young man in a wheelchair who is part of the protesters. He's in his mid-20s. He spoke to a translator and said life has become unbearable.
So he's saying that we are all in the economy, and for that matter, there's no discrimination. So all of us are affected by the system. And so anything going on wrong is affecting both abilities and disabilities.
All the people I met at the protests say they have been forced to make adjustments to their daily lifestyles in order to stay afloat. This lady, who is a teacher, says she now skips breakfast and does not eat anything for supper. She describes it as 010.
And we'll have to borrow in order to end demand. We borrow for transportation, we borrow to buy foodstuffs to feed ourselves and our families. And we are the head of the families. I eat once a day.
Eat once a day?
I eat once a day. So I eat in.
Is that what they call 100 or 001?
010.
So it means you skip breakfast, you eat lunch, and then you skip dinner.
Yes, please. So exactly.
010.
010. In order to be able to take care of my family. Because my family, they are depending on me. And I can't eat 3 times a day. So I have to sacrifice for them to also be able to.
The executive director of the Alliance for Social Equity and Public Accountability, ASEPA, Mensa Thompson, like many of the demonstrators, wants the president, his vice, the finance minister, and the energy minister to resign over the worsening economic conditions.
The last person we want to add to the list of people who must step down is the energy minister. We live in a country where fuel has moved from 6 cedis per litre to 17 cedis for petrol and 24 cedis for diesel, and we are not calling for the head of the energy minister, Matthew Popo Prempe. The energy minister must go. He must go. The energy minister must go. Workers in my office are agitating for a salary increment because of high cost of transportation to work, and have not been able to add a penny to them because I can't afford it.
Security analyst Adib Sani, who took part in the protest, says the current economic situation can have dire consequences on Ghana's security.
That is that there's a direct correlation between economics and security. As a matter of fact, economics is security, and it's the most important aspect of security, which is human security. So if the people are not assured of basic necessities of life, if the youth are unemployed, are pushed into uncertainty, without options, they go into survival mode, and that would translate into fiscal insecurity.
2012 CPP presidential candidate Dr. Abu Sakara says the president's proposed solution during last Sunday's address would do little to bring the economy back on track.
What are you doing to increase production before you are restricting? What are you doing to reduce the transaction costs associated with production to make our system more competitive? All these issues are not short-term issues that you just take the decision this week and then by next week everything is fine. We know that is not the case. Today is not the day for all these technical details. Today is the day to say that change of government without change of government is fruitless. So we must have the change of governance that has to do with not only fundamental policy changes, but also constitutional changes that will bring us the kind of governance we need. That will be for the many and not the few.
Lead convener of Fix the Country, Oliver Baka-Vormao, also wants the president, his vice, and the finance minister to resign.
You know, that the problems that we are faced today and where we are now is as a result of a political class that is a gulf between the political class and those who are governed. They do not listen. They are not held to any account. And we have always said that to structurally reform this country, we must have a conversation about our constitution. that conversation cannot be deferred. And even though people are here delivering that persons we have elected be held accountable, I think that it is also important that we engage in those medium-term and long-term conversations to avoid us being here. This is about the 17th time we are back at the IMF. We cannot continue like this.
Private legal practitioner Martin Kpebu, who organized the protest, had earlier stated he was expecting 100,000 people. He says he's happy with the numbers that he saw.
I say it's okay for starters. It's okay for starters. If you check our history, even Me Preko, they didn't get all the numbers on one day. They did Accra, they did Kumasi, and all the regions. That's a cumulative effect that you got. So this is a good launch, an extremely good launch.
Many of the people we've been speaking to have described this as a long walk to economic freedom. They say that they are hoping that the people in authority will actually consider some of the suggestions that they've made. The times are very difficult, and many of them have had to take very difficult decisions in order to stay afloat.
So my colleagues are covering the Me Preko demonstration. Initially it was Samuel Kojo Brace, later Maxwell Agbagba, as you saw in your shot. So some Ghanaians protested the rising cost of living on Saturday. Hundreds of them poured onto the streets of Accra. And we had some prominent people as well featuring there. Dr. Abusa Kara Foster, Adib Sani, a security analyst, quite a number of prominent people hitting the streets. But how do we assess everything that they did? Is it reflective of everything that we're seeing, the generality, the thoughts of the generality of the people? Joining me in the studio currently, Paul Grave Bwachidankwa. He is government spokesperson on governance and security. Of course, we'll also be joined by our other guests who will be taking this discussion from different angles, from the legal angle, from the socio-economic angle, and from security as well. The very person who was there yesterday, that is Saturday, Adib Sani. But let me come into the studio. Paul Grave, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Benjamin. It's good to be here.
It's been quite a while.
Indeed. Indeed.
Has it been years since we last spoke?
I think so. Yes, I think it's been about 4 years since we last spoke.
Wow.
It means that we've been working.
We've been working.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, but it's good to be on your platform, and thank you really for the opportunity to be here to just engage the Ghanaian people. And a very good morning to your viewers and listeners.
Great. When you look at Ghana's economy currently, let's start from there because that was the basis for this entire demonstration. What do you see as Paul Grave? I don't know whether to ask you to detach yourself from your role as a government spokesperson. I feel that would be unfair because you are here speaking for government. But what do you see?
So generally, I think that it's a very difficult time for us as a government, and it's a very difficult time for the global world. You are aware that the world is not as it used to be, and the managers of the economy, especially the leadership of President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, is seeking to address these very teething challenges that encounters our economy. I agree with a number of the issues that have arisen as it relates to fuel hikes and as it relates to the depreciation of the Ghana cedi against the forex. But you are aware that our government has been working on these issues. The president addressed the nation about a week ago, laid out the entire economic strategy that we have as a government, also laid out very strongly and confidently our conversation with the IMF and how we are sure that before the year 2022 goes to a close, we would have reached an IMF agreement to be able to implement that. We are aware they are very challenging times. The president also pleaded very strongly with market people and traders. The president pleaded with the forex exchange people. The president pleaded with Ghanaian people who originally would go to the bank or go to the black market or go to the forex to change their Ghana cedis into forex, that if we depreciate our own Ghanaian cedi, it comes to affect all of us. And so clearly we appreciate the challenges. We agree and admit that we are in a crisis, but in the midst of the crisis, it's a collective decision that we need to all come on board to solve the issue. I followed the demonstration. I looked at the issues that they raised. I do not think that we have gotten to a stage where the president needs to be impeached, because the issues that are even enlisted in the Constitution, I'm not sure the president has faltered to any of them. The president is at post ensuring that we address the very teething plight of the Ghanaian people. And we assure the Ghanaian people that these challenges are being worked upon, for which reason everyone should exercise some restraint and patience for government.
So you talk about restraint and patience. There are two dynamics to this equation, because, of course, I'm looking at a story in the Ghanaian Times today talking about the publication of false news landing to in court when it comes to, dollar accounts, and how some people supposedly, there was a run on some banks to do that. I was just sharing with you before we came on air, going to a shop and checking out their prices. 400 and something cedis for a product. When I returned from Lomé, 800 and something cedis, when they hadn't really changed stock. But they would also tell you that, listen, it's because if we're going to get new stock, this is the going price and we must sell it as such. But I'd like to find out. Mr. President said in that address, even as we talk about Me Preko, he said, we are in this together. Do you know, interestingly, I don't know whether you've watched on social media, a lot of people have come to me and said, no, we are not in this together. Your circumstances and mine are not the same. So let me ask you, Paul Grave. You heard KT Hammond when he said that he nearly fought with a fuel attendant. Are you feeling the pinch as well? Are you feeling the pinch like every Ghanaian?
I am very much feeling the pinch like every Ghanaian. I mean, I'm a citizen of this country. I go to the pump, I go to the market. I am very much feeling the pinch of it. And I'll tell you of a truth. Government has cut down expenditure. You are aware that government cut down expenditure when government held their cabinet retreat as at March.
Are you talking of the 30% expenditure cuts?
Salaries have been cut.
Some have said that is child's play.
Not at all. Not at all. I think that in this republic, there's not been any government, especially that has been plundered with such economic crisis, that has cut down expenditure in terms of government expenditure by 30%.
Cause to do so, and people feel can do a lot more.
There's actually never been any government as well that has also cut their salary for 30%, cut down 50% of fuel. There's not been any government that has cut down allowance in terms of per diems that people would have. There's not been any government at all. And so if you look at the issues that have arisen in a very short time, you can clearly and confidently say that we are all sharing the burden of the Ghanaian people, and this has never happened at all. We have put a moratorium on travels, except it is very important. As I speak to you, if you travel through the Pokwasi Road is being expanded and is being done very clearly. In the midst of these crises, young people are going to school, free SHS is happening. In the midst of these crises, government is seeking to continually industrialize the country. In the midst of these crises, hospitals are being built. Agenda 111 is ongoing. In the midst of these crises, MMDC are continually engaging their constituents. In the midst of these crises, government is tackling global issues. On the 1st of November, you are aware that Ghana sat at the UN Security Council, the president chaired, and in the midst of this crisis, the global world is looking at Ghana in the midst of all these challenges. When I speak to you, the team is in COP27 in Cairo, just to be able to see how we can reduce our emission, and government is working. So I agree, it's a very, very difficult time. And in the midst of the difficulty, Ubuntu, Uguntu, Ugabantu, which is a Zulu proverb that says that you are who you are because of other people, you do not exist as an island. In the midst of this crisis, government has not shielded its responsibility to the Ghanaian people.
Let's quantify a bit. I like to do facts and figures. These 30% cuts, a lot of people, CSOs, economic experts have said, this is a drop in a bucket. It's like a drop in the ocean. It means practically nothing. So let me ask you, you pose this question a lot to people and you don't get an answer. How much have we got so far from these savings that supposedly we're getting as a state? How much?
Very good question. So from the 1st of April to the end of December, it's estimated that we'll raise close to about 30 million Ghana cedis.
30 million Ghana.
Exactly. So you can do the permutation and divide it by 9. And in the address of President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo last week, he stated that it's been extended to 2023. That's a hardship on every person that works for the government. The president has stated very confidently that if you come into his government to want to make money, then that is not his government. And clearly has shown evidence to that every single person that works in the government of President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, their salaries have been cut down by 30%. That is a share of the burden of the Ghanaian people. And I do not think that there's been any government, even in the midst of the crisis, there's been any government that has shown that level of Ubuntu and community to the Ghanaian people. But in the midst of that, I'm very certain that as we look at the various issues, this morning I'm aware that the Minister for Transport is meeting the GPRTU as it relates to the affairs. Government asked that they charge close to about 19%. They have increased it to about 39%. And so there are various conversations, various stakeholder meetings that are ongoing to ensure that all these issues that are arising are meeting the needs of the Ghanaian people. This morning, whilst I was on my way, I saw a truck load of plantain coming into Accra. And so you can imagine.
Is this part of the Agric Minister's project to bring food from Western North?
There's a bumper harvest, even in the midst of these. There's a bumper harvest. And if we continually eat our local food and have appetite for our local food, I think that we'll be able to save the economy very well. Benjamin, it would interest you to know, if we decide as a country not to bring in rice, vegetable oil, toothpick, and all of those other things into the country, we would save the economy close to about $3 billion.
But who created that problem? We all created that problem.
Absolutely.
Our governments have shut down. I mean, look, there's 1D, 1F. Why are we still importing toothpicks? Why are we still importing some of the very basic essentials? Do you know how much we export every year of tissue, toilet roll? $100 million.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt it.
In all, we're looking at $10.8 billion for some of the basic communities.
Absolutely.
Look at the price of oil. Look at the price of rice.
Absolutely.
So whose fault is it?
No, but Benjamin, you see, it's our collective responsibility as a country. You are aware that it's been from one government onto another government. It is only the government of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo that has sought to tackle industrialization by the bull, taking it by the bull and ensuring that we are addressing it. There's not been any government. We sought out to build close to about 256 district industries and factories in this country. We've built close to about 200 as we speak now that are meeting the needs of the Ghanaian people. Now you are aware that if it's taking,
a lot of people, they say they can't see them.
They can't see them?
No.
People can't find Ekunfi juice. People can't find the industrialization of ceramics. People can't find. I can list them.
Let's do this exercise. I know that there are some, like the ceramics factory, a Chinese factory that has been refurbished and add-ons and all of that. I know about those. Off the top of your head, can you name 10 of them, maybe without having to consult?
I need to refer. I mean, I'm not an aggluttomy of knowledge. I can refer and list all the factories that have been done. I mean, clearly, very, 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 very clearly. And I'll just list them. List from number 1, Palm Pharmaceuticals. They manufacture pharmaceutical products. It's at Ikapim South, Eastern region. They have employed direct and indirect close to about 550 people. Prefos Ghana Limited, they manufacture street lights.
I know of Prefos.
You know Prefos.
Prefos has been in existence long.
Absolutely. The goal of the one district, one factory is to revive dead industries. Clearly.
But Prefos wasn't dead.
Well,
Prefos has never been dead.
Well, no, I'm not talking about Prefos. I'm talking about other industries that were not existent in terms of their expenditure and in terms of their funding and their employers and everything were dormant. Government injected money into that. You can go to Dako Farms and have a look at that. Dako Farms has been one of the foremost companies. They used to be at Akweje, thereabout. You remember, exactly. So the investment of the one district, one factory is not just for new factories that we are pioneering, but it's also for existing factories that need the support of government, and government has invested into that. I can go on to list Profad glazing system. They manufacture roofing sheets. Osiadan, many people are aware of Osiadan that is existing already. They came for some facility.
You're going through
clearly,
a list there.
lots of investment.
Let me ask you this. Especially when we're being told that we're still importing so much, 10.8 billion. How much are we going to the IMF for?
Oh, I mean, you are aware.
No. So 3 billion.
We're going for 3 billion.
We're going to literally beg for 3 billion.
We are not begging. We are not begging. We are not begging. There are many countries in this world. There are many countries in this world that have gone to the IMF as we speak today.
I'm not saying. I'm not contesting that.
Many countries, not just Ghana.
Argentina has gone for 44 billion. They are being given different tranches. It's not to say we are not aware of that because the circumstances are different. But I'm saying we're going for 3 billion. Begging, cap in hand, when we are importing over $10.8 billion worth of items that we very well could produce here. So then my question to you, before I bring in Professor Kwejo Appiagyei-Etua, if we have all of these factories up and running, Why are we still not filling the gaps? When you look at the gaps, it's not substantially different from when this administration took over and now. In fact, in most cases, it is even worse in terms of our consumption rates, the rice, the sugar, and some of these items we import. So what has been the impact then of 1D1F relating to this conversation?
So Benjamin, you're aware that population is extremely important in this conversation. On this continent, every 60 seconds, 72 children are born on this continent. In other continents, in 60 seconds, 2 children are born. And so consumption definitely would go up.
We all know Africa has a high...
Exactly.
The youth is growing
Exactly.
exponentially.
Which is why every government that comes needs to be able to have an industrialization agenda and plan. And I cannot overemphasize it enough how our government and the government of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has sought to address this industrialization agenda. Mind you, it is also on the particular business model that these investors bring to government for governments to be able to invest in. Which is why there is a conversation around, because I don't know the kind of food people eat in their homes, but if people are eating imported rice and they have gotten a taste of that imported rice, it is important that we begin the conversation around our own local rice and the accessibility of it, which is why in President's speech he did state that yes, of a truth, there's going to be a review of how we import rice, vegetable oil, toothpick into the country. And COVID, in fact, taught us that we need to be self-reliant and self-sufficient as a country because the global economies had closed at the time. Which is why, for me, I believe that Ghana is at a very good place to review a number of these issues so that going forward, we can be strong in our own right.
Okay, so it appears every time, you mentioned COVID, for example. What were the lessons learned and how did we actualize them until a year, 2 years after, we've been hit by the Russo-Ukrainian war? You could say, what were the lessons? How did we, look, even in terms of textiles and all of that. COVID taught us, so we were using textiles for our masks and all of that. What has happened to all of that? But I'll come to you. Let me go to Professor Kwejo Appiah-Etua, lecturer, University of Ghana School of Law. Prof, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
It's really good to have you join the conversation this morning. And I always like it when my former lecturers come here. So, Prof, as a former lecturer, I salute you this morning. I don't know whether you remember me, but
I do remember you. Thank you very much.
Right. Anyway, so let's get into your assessment of what happened on Saturday, Me Preko. First of all, do you think it was valid for people to pour out onto the streets like that? And what is your assessment of the entire enterprise based on what you've seen?
Thank you for having me. I think that the demonstration was justified. And the justification is based on the realities on the ground, especially the economic realities that people are facing. But you can also assess the demonstration by the placards that people bore and displayed, that it was not just about the economy, but it was also about other issues such as galamsey, such as issues about injustices and how people are mistreated over certain issues about how the government is dealing with governance issues in general. So it tells you that people have concerns, and the avenues that the Constitution has created for people to be able to seek redress to some of these opportunities are being denied them. And so there are other steps, of course, that the Constitution grants, which is the right to participation, which we have in this situation. We see people exercising that right, the right to express their feelings about the situation on the ground and to demand that accountability should be factored in, and the government should be held responsible for the various kinds of difficulties that people are facing on the ground.
So do tell me, they like you said, they made issue or took issue with quite a number of the economic developments, from fuel prices to the inflationary rate to the cost of goods to so many other things that we're facing in our economy. And we had quite a number of people, prominent people, Dr. Abu Sakara Foster, Adib Sani, a security analyst, who also joined us on this conversation, and the other leaders of this entire drive re-echo that. But when it comes to what they were aiming at. Resignation of Mr. President. Then for some, the vice president as well. Then in addition, the finance minister. Then, as Mensa Thompson of ASEPA now adds, the energy minister, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, because he says he is supervising this entire debacle when it comes to energy prices and all of that. How do you react to that, contextualizing it in the 1992 Constitution, what it says, especially about Mr. President, and what it will take to impeach him or something like that?
Well, first of all, I think that the Constitution grants the people certain rights that they can use to question governance and to demand accountability. First of all, like I said, the right to participation. We have the right to take part in governance as a people. And this is supported by the fact that we have the right to freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, which was expressed through the demonstrations that were held. Now, the question as to the demand or the focus of the demonstration or what triggered the demonstration is about the asking for the government or the president and the vice president to resign. And that is placed clearly in the Constitution. The Constitution demands certain form of responsibility from the president and the vice president. And if you look at the grounds for removal of the president from office in Article 69 or so of the Constitution, it talks about the economic conditions as one of the bases to demand resignation of the president from office. And of course, the Constitution says that that should be undertaken by Parliament, by a 2/3 majority vote, before a committee will be set up by the Chief Justice to go into that. However, this is a case where Parliament is not performing its functions. And Parliament is a representative of the people. So the people have the right to demand that Parliament does its job, or the president himself and the vice president himself should resign. And it has happened in some countries. So I think that by checking its responsibilities, Parliament, by checking its responsibilities, the people that put the members of Parliament in there is taking the power into their own hands. Because if you go to the preamble of the Constitution, and Article 1 of the Constitution as well, it talks about that the power belongs to the people and sovereignty resides in the people. So that it is that power that the people are exercising by going on the streets. And that is what should be accepted as being a performance of their responsibilities, and therefore it should be a way of shaming Parliament for not doing its job. Because we have a situation where...
In which sense, Prof?
In the sense that if you look at the economic morass we are in, if you look at the different circumstances, challenges we are in, everybody expressing concerns. And the fact that the government remains adamant, the fact that the government is on a public relations gimmick, trying to justify and to give credence to the good things it has done without admitting not even an iota of admittance that it is not performing well, and it should admit some of the weaknesses and try to cushion the hardship that the people are facing. It is on a publicity tour trying to tout its achievements, which remains some of it on paper, some of which not real, some of which manufactured, which therefore sends a clear message that the government is on one planet and the people are on another planet, that is Ghana. So the people have to take the power back and to demand that there's a change of leadership. And that is what they are doing. And it means that Parliament, by the power given it under Article 69, has shelved that responsibility. And that is why I see that something needs to be done. Look at, for example, the 80 parliamentarians that called for the resignation of the Minister of Finance. And we see how they have recoiled into their shells. I heard Honorable Osei Chimensa saying that now it is all the NPP members of Parliament, the whole caucus, excuse me, that is saying that the finance minister should go. But it is mere rhetoric. It should go beyond that speech and statement and be backed by action. What action have they been taking? The minority is saying that it is calling for a vote of censure, but the leader of the 80, original 80, if I could call them rebels, says that they are not supporting that. It's a different agenda from what they are doing.
Right.
So what is being said here? They are not doing the job that the Constitution has assigned them to do for the people.
Just hold your thoughts right there for me. I'll come right back to you. Paul Wave, so quite a number of issues. And let me just quote from the 1992 Constitution. You were nodding your head when Article 69 was mentioned by Prof. It actually states, 1, the president shall be removed from office if he is found, and shall in legal terms means it's obligatory, to have acted in willful violation of the oath of allegiance and the presidential oath set out in the second schedule, 2, or in willful violation of any other provision of the Constitution. And it's important that it's mentioned here as well in point 2. Prejudicial, that is any action prejudicial or inimical to the economy or the security of the state. I just want to focus on that. And then you hear Professor Appiah Etua mention that we're in an economic morass, that government is adamant that government is full of PR gimmicks. You are on a publicity tour instead of addressing the core issues. We had Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia at the with Chochoza, and he was talking about what you have done. But what have you failed to do? And what exactly is the level of acceptance that maybe some things have not gone right?
Benjamin, I think that the learned professor hasn't done enough justice to what we have admitted to.
Are you impugning what Professor Appiah Etua has said?
Well, you see, even in your reference of the Article 69, it's not all of it that you read, but it's not a problem.
No, because of course we are talking about economic issues.
No, it's fine. I can understand. But it's really important for us to state that when President spoke to the nation, he admitted publicly to the Ghanaian people that we are in crisis. Which leader would stand before their people to admit that we are in crisis? President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo did that. And so we are not in any way sharing our responsibility, and we are not in any way on a PR campaign or a PR gimmick. We have admitted that we are in hardship. We are not adamant to the voices of the Ghanaian people. We ourselves as a government have even taken measures, very strict measures on our own expenditure. And so if it goes in that line, I think that is inappropriate because yes, we are in a very difficult economic challenge, but in the midst of that, it's important that we remind the Ghanaian people what we have done and what we are capable of doing for the Ghanaian people to continually have their trust in the leadership that they voted for.
I think now, when you talk about capability, what you are able to do.
Let me land.
Go ahead.
The issues that have arisen, for which reason there's been a demonstration, which the Ghana police aided and allowed them to do because it's their constitutional right and mandate.
Right.
And their call for the president's impeachment is inappropriate because there is not in any of the
inappropriate.
Well, yes, because there is not in any of the Article 69 interpretation that the president has faulted to any of them. So we are addressing the economic challenges.
He's not faulted against the second part.
I can read.
When
the president. It says that to have acted in willful violation of the oath of allegiance and in the presidential oath set out in the second schedule or in willful violation of any provision of the Constitution, the president has not faulted to this. Number 2, or have conducted himself in a manner which brings or is likely to bring the high office of president into disrepute, ridicule, or contempt. The president has not faulted to this. And number 3, prejudicial or inimical to the economy or the security of the state. The president has not faulted to this at all. We have not been adamant to the crisis of the Ghanaian people. We are addressing the Ghanaian needs and the plight of the economy. You are aware that we have begun a conversation with the IMF. The government is not sitting aloof for the economy to crash down. You are aware as well how we have cut down expenditure. You did ask how much we are able to raise. We've raised close to about 30 million Ghana cedis as a result of that. The president has extended that, and I've stated that there's not been any government, you can check the records, that has cut down expenditure by 30%. It's important that we cannot throw that away under the carpet. You are aware that even in the midst of these economic challenges, the country is at work.
Okay, so
various
it's
issues,
clear.
infrastructural work that we are doing
let me just sneak
currently ongoing. And it's not a PR gimmick. It's
right.
evidential for Ghanaian people to see.
Unfortunately, Prof feels it's a PR gimmick, and others too, some of those who hit the streets on Saturday felt it was a PR gimmick. But let me just pose a quick question to you before I go to Adib Sani, who is waiting patiently on the line. If all of this were working, I just want to find out, why do you think Mr. President at that recent Global Citizens Festival was booed? I have my stance. I've mentioned that I wouldn't do that, but he was booed. Then we've seen other incidents in recent times. Another one, and now the Vice President at Hogbechuchuza was also basically shouted down. If all of these things you're saying, you're doing, are actually impacting the people or they are being felt, do you think the people would be reacting this way?
You know, Benjamin, we live in very interesting times. And it's a deep concern to see that the Ghanaian electorate is plying this particular route. Because you know what, they have a proverb in Tree that we need to be mindful the kind of precedents we are setting, especially for our leaders in this country. I condemn every act of booing of any leader. You would realize that in all of my communication and in all my expose, you will never find me on any public platform disrespect, disregard, or insult. And so it's about time we need to call that out. What is the essence of booing a national leader? If persons are purported to be behind to make the government unpopular, I think that I'll use this very honorable platform to advise them to desist from that. It doesn't augur well at all. Whether it is 2 or 3, it is not a good precedence we need to set for our national leaders. And of a truth, what wrong did the Vice President do? Of a truth, what did the President do for having Ghana to host the Global Citizen Award? What wrong did the President do? What wrong did the President do to have gone to Ashanti region to supervise ongoing works? I was on the trip. What wrong did the President do to see to it that the KJTR market phase 2 is being done for the people of Ashanti region? What wrong did the President do?
So you're against booing?
I'm definitely against booing.
You do know that best practices in other democracies, the democracies we want to aspire to, this is just common there. They do this. In fact, at a point, though it's not substantiated and it's not, someone even slapped Emmanuel Macron recently. It's not the right thing. Let's not even, but that is how far some people go. In those democracies, booing someone is not, I don't know why you think we can be democratic, and here it's some Benjamin, sort of, is it a crime?
Benjamin, it's not a crime, but it's not every meal you eat.
Right.
That's the truth. It's not every meal you eat.
Let me quickly do this. Let me bring in Adib Sani. Adib, you're a security analyst, and you happened to be at this demonstration that day. I saw you in full force also sharing your thoughts with us. How would you assess the outcome of that demonstration? And having heard Paul Graves speak and Prof speak, what is your reaction to what they've said so far?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Paul Graves is a brother. A very good morning to him.
Good morning.
And a very good morning to Prof. It's quite obvious that my brother is on, how do we call it, on a damage control sort of venture, because it's quite obvious that they have blamed everybody but themselves for where we have gotten ourselves to today. You painted a very rosy picture about the economy, made it look like there's absolutely no way things can go wrong. Peter Okocha on BBC told the president that an economic expert, so is it a financial expert, said that our reckless borrowing and some of the activities we're engaged in, including capital-intensive projects and all that, is a recipe for disaster. The president bastardized it. Here we are today. As we speak, food inflation alone, as at the end of September, is 122%. Professor Hank from Johns Hopkins University said that he doesn't agree with our inflation rate of 37.2% as at the end of September. According to him, it's about 148%. We have the most expensive food in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the World Bank. So the government keeps telling us what they are doing, but they are failing to acknowledge that they also made mistakes And that is why we are here today. You need to eat the humble pie and stop talking plenty, because that is not what is going to salvage the situation. People are suffering, people are angry. So we responded to the call of the people. We are apolitical, we don't belong to any political organization. We feel that what is going on is not right. And as citizens and not spectators, we need to call government to order. The demonstration was very successful, even though there was spread of fake news about how bloody it would turn. I had someone reaching out to my brother abroad and sending him this message, and my brother just took a screenshot of that message and sent to me that, boss, please, I saw Adib on TV regarding the Me Preko. Please convince him not to join. It will be bloody. And there was this other message going around on social media, widely shared, and I know it is deliberate, that good evening all. There will be a demonstration on Saturday. My advice is, if you have nothing important doing in town, stay home, or better be careful when you go out. Do not take part in this. Anything can happen, please. But that notwithstanding, we had both Ghanaians coming out in their numbers. It was peaceful. We stuck to the route as agreed with the police. And I must say, this is just the beginning, certainly not the end.
All right. Thank you for those initial comments. I'll be coming back to both of you, gentlemen. But let me, for the sake of time conditions with Paul Grave this morning, let's quickly do this. You've listened to both parties. You've seen the placards of ordinary Ghanaians saying, Charlie, Krumaya she, Nana, Yebibi. What is the way forward? What are your final comments, and what is the way forward? How do we get this remedied? I don't know whether our team from Abu Dhabi has returned yet with cheaper fuel. I don't know about that. Yeah, how do we get out of this hole we're in?
So, Benjamin, Nana Eyebibi, just because you spoke in Twi, I need to respond that way. Nana Eyebibi. Yes, as a government, we have plans and already have begun conversations to be able to buy cheaper fuels so we can bring it into the Ghanaian economy.
Are we getting it from Abu Dhabi?
Well, there's a team that has gone out.
Because I know they are there for a different mission as well.
Well, there's a team that has gone out. We are also looking at various places.
Like where?
Well, lots of places.
Are we looking at Russia?
We are looking at various places. I like to leave it at that. We are looking at various places where we can be able to afford cheaper fuel and bring it into the Ghanaian economy. Yes, we have heard the plight of the Ghanaian people. We are not adamant to it. We have heard the plight of Abib, we've heard the plight of Professor, we've heard the demonstrators, even some that cannot interpret what BOJ is and Aboche is. We have also heard all of them, but we want to be able to state emphatically that we are in this together, and we are going to come out stronger. It's important that as they revolt around the country, they should not spend a lot of money, because a lot of these things also cost money in organizing demonstrations. So save the little money that you have so that we can all be able to bring the economy back to life.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Paul Grave. It's been good having you join this conversation.
I'll come again.
We should do this more often.
Absolutely.
Paul Grave Boakye Dankwa is government spokesperson on governance and security. He had to take the time to join us this morning. Thank you so much. Let me go back to Adib Sani. So quickly, you have said that this entire enterprise was successful. Having done what you did, what would you say the real impact of that was?
We represented the voices of ordinary Ghanaians. We proved beyond reasonable doubt that, yes, you can protest without necessarily resorting to violence. We are putting pressure on the politicians. I'm sure a lot of them didn't sleep that night. And this is just the beginning. Even though we expected more than the crowd we saw, but it still reflects the level of anger in the system. And we are hoping that with this demonstration, which gained a lot of local and international media attention, it will put pressure on politicians to act so we are able to salvage the situation. I would have expected that in as much as they're doing a lot of talking, they put in place certain strategies so we are able to improve the situation rather than just do the talking. We were expecting the president would reduce the size of his government. There are too many government appointees, all with V8s. And today, if you are going to fill a V8, it is about 2,500 cedis. And it will interest you to know that all these government appointees have their personal assistants who are also running around with V8s. The size of the government for a small country like Ghana is just too much. And in the midst of all we are going through, the president was still private jetting. And his appointees were also still traveling using business class instead of economy. So we want to see action, not just by word, but by deed. So we would know that, yes, indeed, the government is committed to improving the situation. And that's exactly what we are yet to see. And we would also want them to accept the fact that, yes, they erred. A lot of mistakes were made. And so what next? The president would have to fire his finance minister also. But after 137 MPs said we cannot work with him, he's lost credibility. The president is refusing to do so. That is why, in line with our democratic rights, in line with the constitution, we want the president to go. As simple as that. If not, they are yet to see the best of us.
The conversation, but on a broad economic basis. First of all, I'll start with you, Prof, though. The number of people, some have said that if the president goes and the vice president goes, assuming they resign, which is very unlikely, of course, the speaker would have to take over. Parliamentary processes would have to be looked at. 3 months into that, some election would have to be conducted. And now people are adding the finance minister and they're adding the energy minister. Is that practical when it comes to our law? Just quickly on that.
Sorry, the practicality of the resignation of the other ministers?
No, to let go of, so you want the president to go, you want the vice to go, you want the finance minister. These are cabinet ministers, finance minister, energy minister, all to go in one fell swoop. Is that a practical demand to make?
I think it is, because the demand for their removal from office is based on performance. And the performance so far has been nothing to write home about. It's been very abysmal. And people see it. It is not only the 2 or 3 ministers, but the Minister for Agriculture has also been pinned as not also doing very well at all. For example, we've seen him saying that prices are very cheap and reasonable on the market, but people are crying that prices are high. And then he goes on to say that he's setting up stalls at the Ministry of Agriculture to sell products cheaper to Ghanaians. This is just unrealistic. It doesn't show leadership. It doesn't show somebody who is committed to the concerns of the people and want to have things changed. Meanwhile, a lot of money has been pumped into planting for food and jobs program, but we are not seeing the results. So if government continues to tell us stories which is not reflected in the lives of the people, then it is a realistic demand that they should go. There are more competent people who can take over the reins of government and do a better job. And so it is not an unrealistic demand at all. We need people who have the nation at heart, people who, considering that we are not in normal times. When COVID came, we said we were not in normal times. COVID has more or less passed, but Ghana is in a more precarious situation even during the COVID era. So we need leadership that focuses on producing results. Leaders that realize the problem and say that we can do better, and this is how we need to focus and do things better. The government representative who just left was talking about saving $30 million. Excuse me, that's
actually CDs. 30 million CDs.
It is. I want to be very careful with my words, but it is not something that can appeal to people to say that government is doing something good. We have a bloated ministry. We have so many ministers who are underperforming, and we need to cut down on these numbers. We have government appointees with their networks and people as assistants and so on, who are all milking from the consolidated fund. We need to cut down all these people. They are not performing. Even if they are performing, that is a different thing. So we are speaking on behalf of the ordinary person, people you see on the streets who cannot afford, people who call you and demand that they need food on the table. They slept last night.
Right.
They cannot find any table on the food to eat. This is what we need to deal with, and we need leadership. This is a wartime situation, and that is what calls for slimming, having a slim, lean government, and making sure that the government delivers. The Minister for Energy has not delivered. He needs to go. Many of them have not delivered. They need to go. And that is what the government should listen and do for the people.
Okay.
And this is not coming from the minority or it is coming from the people.
Okay, so you've added your voice to the fact that the Minister of Energy, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, hasn't delivered. He also must go. In 40 seconds, gentlemen, so there are two sides to this story. For example, I'm looking at Economy Times today. It says job scarcity on the rise. It also says fuel prices to surge further as BDCs to sell at going exchange rate. But you also see, we're told that something is being done about our fuel price situation so that maybe if we get cheaper fuel, then the prices will go down. In fact, the governor of the Bank of Ghana has also been accused for non-performance, but he is named here as among Africa's 10 best central bank governors. Are we overdoing it? There's also commodity prices dropping. Cocoa, gold, crude oil, our exports are dropping, even while we are hoping to curb imports. 40 seconds each. Is this going to get better? I'll start with you, Prof, and then go to Adib.
I wish I could be as optimistic as I could be, but the horizon, the signs on the horizon are negative. And until we see some changes on the ground, it may affect the security of the state. I'm concerned about the link between the economy and security. When human security is threatened, it affects the security of the state, and I'm concerned much about that. And so in the near future, I don't see much thing changing unless there are some drastic changes we see from the government, where the number of ministries are cut, where the government is dealing seriously with the Galamsey issue, which also has a strong link with the economy. Until that turnaround comes about, then I don't see much prospects for the country going forward, unfortunately.
Prof, we're so grateful that you took the time to join this conversation. We wish you the very best of the day, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And that is Professor Kwadwo Appiagyei, a lecturer at the University of Ghana School of Law, or Faculty of Law. Let me wrap with Adib Sani. 40 seconds for you with your wrap-up comments.
Okay, so we are in a sorry state, I must say. We cannot deny that fact. And it is an indictment, it's an insult on the country for us who export about 200,000 barrels of oil a day to go elsewhere looking for fuel when we have thermal oil refinery and have deliberately ensured that it doesn't refine any oil because some people have interest. They import the finished products at the expense of Ghanaians. Some also have decided to bring partners, so-called partners from Russia and China to set up new oil refineries altogether. How do you expect that we move forward as a country? Okay, so because of people's interest, we are here today. Thermal oil refinery is not able to refine, not because thermal oil refinery doesn't have that capability. It's a lie when they tell us they don't have the capability. They have the capacity, they have the capability, but because of people's interest, thermal oil refinery is prevented from refining oil. And that is why we have to go to Dubai and other places begging for fuel. That is an insult.
Thank you, Adib Sani, for joining the conversation as well. Adib is a security analyst. He was actually on the ground at the Me Preko Reloaded demonstration on Saturday. Of course, we also had in the studio earlier Palgrave Bwachadankwa, his government spokesperson on governance and security. This is how we draw the curtains on this particular end of the conversation. But coming up after the break, we're also going to be deliberating on those teacher unions who say the latest appointee as Director General of the Ghana Education Service must go. They say this is the first time a non-teacher is occupying the position and they are resisting it forcefully. But do they have a point? That conversation up next as we reach our correspondents across the country after the break.